My name is Marian. I am 24 years old. Currently, I am sitting in an ergonomic chair on the 14th floor of a glass tower in downtown Seattle, overlooking the Puget Sound. I work as a senior software engineer. I make $140,000 a year. I have a 401k, full dental, and a key card that grants me access to one of the most secure buildings in the city. To my colleagues, I am the young prodigy who fixes broken code before most people have finished their morning coffee. To my clients, I am the reliable professional who never cracks under pressure. But 8 years ago, I was shivering on a front lawn in the rain, clutching a garbage bag full of textbooks, watching my mother lock the door on my life. 8 years ago, I was homeless. I spent nearly a decade building a fortress around my life. I built it with coding languages, with late nights, with 3 concurrent jobs, and with a level of discipline that borders on obsession. I thought I was safe. I thought the 6-figure salary and the security guards in the lobby were enough to keep the past where it belonged, in the rearview mirror. I was wrong. Last week, my mother didn't just cross a boundary. She escalated a war I thought was over. She walked into my place of business, not with a birthday card or an apology, but with a priest in a cheap suit and a petition for emergency conservatorship. She didn't come to visit her daughter, as she came to seize control of the mentally ill woman she believed had been stolen by sin. She came to drag me back to a life I had clawed my way out of. She thought she had the power of God on her side. She thought she had the element of surprise. She thought that because she gave birth to me, she owned me. But she forgot one thing. She forgot that I am an engineer. My job is to identify bugs, document errors, and execute solutions. And for 7 years, I'd been holding onto a piece of data, a single archived voicemail that proved exactly who the real monster was. If you have ever had to become your own parent because the ones you were born to failed you, stay until the end. If you have ever been told that your success is actually sickness or that your independence is rebellion, keep listening. You're going to see exactly what happens when a religious narcissist tries to destroy a woman who built herself from scratch. You will see how one played voicemail turned a lobby full of witnesses into a jury, and how a fake lawsuit turned into a permanent restraining order. Have you ever had to choose between your family and your own survival? Have you ever had to look at the people who raised you and realize they were the biggest threat to your safety? If you're nodding your head, drop a survivor in the comments right now. I want to know who I'm talking to. Because what I did in that lobby wasn't just for me, and it was for every kid who was ever thrown out in the rain. To understand why I didn't scream in that lobby, you have to understand the silence of the house I grew up in. My mother is a devout Baptist, not the bring a casserole to the potluck kind, but the fire and brimstone before breakfast kind. In our house, there was no gray area. There was God, and there was the enemy. There was obedience, and there was rebellion. I learned early on to make myself small, to hide my thoughts, and to be the perfect, pious daughter she wanted to display to the congregation like a trophy. But biology doesn't care about theology. When I was 16, the cracks in the porcelain doll facade finally shattered. It wasn't a planned rebellion. I didn't stage a protest. It happened after a school assembly about living your truth. I was walking out of the gymnasium, adrenaline humming in my veins, and a friend asked me a direct question about who I liked. For the first time in my life, I didn't lie. I said her name. I didn't know a girl from my youth group was walking 3 feet behind me. I didn't know she had her phone out. I didn't know that by the time I got off the bus 3 hours later, my life was already over. I walked up the driveway of our suburban 2-story house. The lights were on. My mother was waiting by the door. If she had been screaming, I might have known how to handle it. Screaming implies emotion. Screaming implies a loss of control. But she wasn't screaming. She was standing there with her hands folded in front of her, wearing her Sunday cardigan, looking at me with a terrifying, absolute calm. It was the look of a surgeon deciding which limb to amputate to save the patient. "I heard," she said. Her voice was level, smooth. "I heard what you are." I froze. I was 16 years old. I had $12 in my pocket and a backpack full of chemistry homework. I started to stammer, to explain, to beg. She held up a hand. "We don't need to discuss the details of your perversion, Marian. We need to discuss your soul." She stepped back, opening the door just wide enough for me to see inside, but blocking the entrance with her body. You have a choice. You can choose Jesus right now. You can get on your knees, repent, and we will begin the work of fixing you. Or you can choose sin. But if you choose sin, you don't live under my roof. I looked at her. I looked for my mother, the woman who taught me to tie my shoes, who made me soup when I had the flu. She wasn't there. In her place was a soldier for a cause that required my erasure. I couldn't lie, not anymore. "Mom," I whispered, "this isn't a choice. It's who I am." She didn't blink. She didn't cry. She just nodded once. "Then you have chosen." She let me inside to pack a bag. She gave me 10 minutes. I remember standing in the shower for 3 of them, fully clothed, just so she wouldn't hear me sobbing. I turned the water on hot and let the steam fill the room, trying to wash away the feeling of impending doom. I packed blindly. 3 t-shirts, my favorite hoodie, my chemistry textbook, my laptop, a toothbrush. When I came out of the bathroom, I heard the click. I ran to the front door. Locked. My key wouldn't turn. I rattled the handle. "Mom?" I called out. "Mom, my bag is still inside." I heard movement on the other side. Then the sound of the deadbolt sliding home. A moment later, where the front window opened, my clothes came flying out onto the wet grass. Then my textbooks, the pages fluttering in the drizzle. Then my laptop, my lifeline, landed with a sickening crack on the pavement. "Mom!" I pounded on the door. "It's raining, please!" The blinds closed. The porch light flicked off. I stood there for an hour. The rain in Seattle is cold. It gets into your bones. I was soaking wet, shivering so hard my teeth chattered, gathering my ruined things into a pile on the lawn. That's when Mrs. Higgins from next door called the police. I saw the cruiser pull up and felt a surge of relief. The police would help. They had to. You can't just throw a minor out on the street. That was illegal. That was child endangerment. The officer was a heavy-set man who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. He listened to Mrs. Higgins. He looked at me, shivering in my wet hoodie. Then he knocked on my mother's door. She opened it, composed and serene. She told him I was a runaway. Yeah, she told him I was refusing to follow house rules. She told him it was a discipline issue. The officer walked back down the driveway to where I was standing. He didn't offer me a ride. He didn't call Child Protective Services. He sighed, adjusting his belt. "Look, kid," he said, avoiding my eyes. "This is a civil dispute. Parents have the right to set rules in their own home. If you don't like them, that's on you." "I have nowhere to go," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm 16. "There's a shelter downtown," he said. "Go there." Then he got in his car and drove away. That was the moment I learned that no one was coming to save me, not God, not the law, not my mother. The next 6 months were a blur of gray survival. I lived in a youth shelter that smelled permanently of bleach and unwashed bodies. You learn things quickly in a shelter. You learn to sleep with your backpack straps wrapped around your arm so no one can steal it. Or you learn which staff members actually care and which ones are just collecting a paycheck. You learn that hunger isn't a pain in your stomach. It's a fog in your brain that makes it hard to focus on calculus. But I had one thing going for me. I was smart, and I was angry. Mrs. Gable, my history teacher, noticed I was wearing the same hoodie 4 days in a row. She didn't call my mom. She sat me down, gave me a sandwich, and listened. She became my validator. Well, she helped me navigate the legal nightmare of emancipation. She helped me file the paperwork that declared me an adult in the eyes of the state, solely so I could sign a lease and work legal hours. I worked 3 jobs. I opened a coffee shop at 4:30 a.m. I went to school from 8 to 3. I worked as a janitor in an office building from 5 to 10 p.m. I did my homework in utility closets and on bus rides. I ate whatever was left over at the cafe, stale muffins, burnt bagels. I didn't date. I didn't go to prom. I didn't have a teenage dream. I had a spreadsheet of expenses and a countdown clock. I discovered coding during those janitorial shifts. One night, I saw a Python manual left on a desk I was cleaning. I opened it. It made sense in a way my life didn't. Code was logical. If A, then B. If not, try C. There was no Jesus or sin. There was just run or error. I devoured it. I taught myself on library computers. I got a scholarship. I clawed my way into college. Wired then into an internship, and finally into the career that pays me enough to never be cold again. For 8 years, I survived. And And for 8 years, my mother has sent me a text message every single morning at 7 a.m. It's never, "How are you?" It's never, "I'm sorry." Proverbs 16:18. Pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall. Leviticus 18:22. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. She sends this one a lot, but ignoring the irony. Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is death. I never reply, not once. I don't block her number, though. That was my first strategic mistake, or maybe my best instinct. I didn't block her because I needed to know if she was escalating. I needed the data, every text, every voicemail, every email. I saved them. I archived them. I told myself she was just a ghost in the machine, a glitch I had learned to work around. I thought I had outrun her. But narcissists don't let their victims escape. If they can't control you, they have to destroy you. And last week, she decided that text messages weren't enough. She decided to bring the war to my front door. Last Tuesday started like any other Tuesday. The Seattle gray was hanging heavy outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, but inside, the air was conditioned to a crisp 68 degrees. And I was in the zone, that fugue state engineers get into when the code is flowing and the rest of the world ceases to exist. I had my noise-canceling headphones on, a half-empty latte on my desk, and a complex back-end migration running on my second monitor. For 8 years, this office has been my sanctuary. It is a place of logic. Here, I am not a daughter. I am not a sinner. I am not a homeless teen. I am Marian, the senior engineer, where I'm the person people come to when they have a problem they can't solve. The boundaries here are clear. You do your work, you get paid, you go home. Then my desk phone rang. I almost ignored it. I usually let everything go to voicemail when I'm coding. But I saw the internal caller ID, lobby reception, Sarah. Sarah is the kind of receptionist who has seen everything. She's handled angry couriers, lost delivery guys, and entitled clients with a smile that never wavers. But when I picked up the phone, her voice was tight, small. "Marian," she whispered, "you need to come down here." "I'm in the middle of a sprint, Sarah," I said, my fingers still hovering over the keyboard. "Can it wait?" "No," she said. "Your mother is here." My hands froze. The cursor on my screen blinked. Line 42, error. "My mother is in Texas," I said automatically. It was a lie I told myself to sleep at night. I knew she wasn't. I knew she was a shadow that could manifest anywhere. "She's here, Marian," Sarah continued, her voice trembling slightly. "And she brought a priest." My blood didn't just run cold, it stopped moving entirely. The world tilted on its axis. A priest, a pastor. "I'm coming down," I said. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, like I was walking through water. I took off my headphones and placed them gently on my desk. I didn't grab my jacket. I didn't lock my screen. I just walked to the elevators. The ride down from the 14th floor takes exactly 45 seconds. In those 45 seconds, the confident six-figure engineer dissolved. I was 16 again. I was wet and cold on the front lawn. I was a child waiting to be punished. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Don't cry," I told myself. "Whatever you do, do not let them see you cry." The elevator doors chimed and slid open. The lobby of my building is impressive. Marble floors, high ceilings, and a security desk that looks like the command bridge of a starship. Usually it's a quiet space where people whisper on their phones or wait for Ubers. Today, it was a stage. There were about 20 people in the lobby. I saw 2 of my project managers standing near the coffee cart, holding their cups halfway to their mouths. I saw a major client I had presented to just yesterday. I saw the 3 security guards standing tensely near the turnstiles, and in the center of them all, standing like she was the star of a tragedy, was my mother. She looked exactly the same as the day she threw me out, only now she was wearing her court appearance suit, a modest navy blue number with a high collar. Beside her stood a man I recognized instantly from the church newsletters she used to force me to read. Pastor John. He was wearing a cheap, ill-fitting suit and holding a large, leather-bound Bible against his chest like a shield. My mother spotted me the moment I stepped off the elevator. Her face transformed. It wasn't the face of a mother seeing a long-lost child. It was the face of a hunter spotting prey. "Marian!" she shouted. Her voice echoed off the marble, sharp and piercing. Every head in the lobby turned. My project managers looked at me. The client looked at me. Sarah, behind the desk, looked terrified. I walked toward them. I didn't run. I forced my spine to straighten. When I forced my face into a mask of professional boredom, I stopped 10 feet away from them. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice was low, controlled. My mother didn't answer me directly. She turned to the audience, my coworkers, the strangers, the security guards. She gestured at me with a shaking hand, performing for the crowd. "We are here to save you," she announced, loud enough for the people on the mezzanine to hear. "We have a petition for emergency conservatorship." "Thought we have spoken to the courts!" Conservatorship. The word hung in the air like toxic gas. I knew exactly what that meant. It's what they did to Britney Spears. It's a legal mechanism to strip an adult of their rights, their money, their medical decisions, their freedom, because they are deemed mentally unfit. She wasn't just here to embarrass me. She was here to seize my assets, quit my job for me, and legally force me into a treatment facility. "You are mentally ill, Marian," she continued. Stepping closer, her eyes were wide, frantic, but calculated. "You are sick with sin. You need God, not this life of lies." Pastor John nodded solemnly beside her. "We just want to bring you home, child," he said. His voice was oily, patronizing. "Your mother loves you. She wants to heal you." "I am 24 years old," I said, my voice rising just enough to be heard by the security team. "I am a senior engineer at a Fortune 500 company. I am not a child. And I am not sick." "You are possessed!" my mother shrieked, dropping the calm act. She lunged forward. Before I could step back, she grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my bicep, a grip of steel. It was the same grip she used to drag me to the altar when I was 12. It was a violation. In my own workplace, in my sanctuary, she put her hands on me. "We are taking you," she hissed, her face inches from mine. "I have the papers, so you're coming with us." That touch, that physical invasion of my autonomy was the mistake. The fear vanished. The 16-year-old girl in the rain vanished. In her place, the engineer came online. Subject is hostile, my brain registered. Threat level, critical. Deploy countermeasures. I didn't pull away immediately. I looked at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at the security guards who were already moving in. Then I looked at her face. "Let go of me," I said. It wasn't a request. But it was a warning. I yanked my arm back. The motion was sharp, violent enough to make her stumble slightly in her heels. "Don't touch me," I said. My heart was still hammering, but my brain had gone ice cold. This is what trauma does to you if you survive it long enough. It stops being fear and starts being data. In that split second, I analyzed the situation like it was a system architecture diagram. Node A, my mother, hysterical, claiming moral authority. And Node B, the priest, a prop used to validate her narrative. Node C, the audience, my coworkers, my clients, security. They were confused. They were watching a mother cry out for her sick daughter. To them, she looked desperate and loving. To them, I looked cold and distant. If I yelled, I looked unstable. If I ran, I looked guilty. If I let security drag her out without context, the rumor mill would destroy my career by lunch. "Did you hear Marian's mom tried to commit her?" "Is she crazy?" I needed to debug the narrative. I needed to execute a hard reset. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. To my mother, it probably looked like I was calling the police, but I wasn't. I was unlocking a vault I had been filling for 7 years. Most people use cloud storage for photos of their cats or vacation videos. I use mine for insurance. I have a private encrypted server. On that server is a folder simply labeled case_file_01. I created that folder the night I moved out of the shelter and into my first dorm room. I sat on the bare mattress, opened my laptop, and made a vow. I will never let them lie about what happened. Every time my mother sent a text about me burning in hell, screenshot, upload, date stamped. Every time she emailed my university trying to get my financial aid revoked, PDF, upload, date stamped. Every time a relative posted on Facebook about how I ran away to do drugs, capture, upload. You date stamped. I treated my abuse like a software project. I created backups. I created redundancy. If my laptop broke, the files were safe. If my phone was stolen, the files were safe. I had gigabytes of proof that the loving mother standing in my lobby was actually a woman who had systematically tried to dismantle my existence. And sitting at the very top of the audio subfolder was a file named voicemail_birthday_17.mp3. I remember the day I got it. It was my 17th birthday. I was working a double shift at the coffee shop. I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days because I needed to save money for a textbook. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I saw her name. For a stupid, weak second, I thought, maybe she's calling to say happy birthday. Maybe she misses me. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it on my break, sitting on a milk crate in the alley behind the shop, smelling like stale espresso and rain. I didn't delete it. I didn't cry. Whoa, I hit save. Then I emailed it to myself. Then I put it on a USB drive. I knew, even at 17, that this recording was different. This wasn't just mean. This was the truth stripped of all the religious camouflage. This was the smoking gun. I had almost used it a dozen times. When she crashed my college graduation, when she tried to turn my grandmother against me. But I always held back. I told myself, save it for when you really need it. Save it for the kill shot. Standing in the lobby, looking at Pastor John's smug, self-righteous face, I knew, this is it. I looked at my mother. She was panting slightly, playing the victim perfectly. Marian, please, she wailed, reaching out again but stopping short of touching me. We have the papers. The court agrees. You aren't well, just come with us. I looked at the papers. She was waving. I'd done my research. I'd spent nights Googling conservatorship abuse and Washington state mental health laws. I knew that without a signature from a judge and a medical evaluation, those papers were just fancy trash. She was bluffing. She was trying to bully me into compliance in front of an audience, banking on my shame to make me fold. She thought the shame would silence me. She didn't realize that shame burns off when you have receipts. I swiped open my phone. I didn't look at my coworkers. I didn't look at security. I looked directly at the man in the cheap suit. You're a pastor? I asked. My voice was calm, unnervingly calm. It projected across the lobby, bouncing off the hard surfaces. He puffed out his chest. I am Pastor John. I run the New Way Ministry. We help families like yours recover from the influence of... Does your church support child abuse? I cut him off. He blinked. Excuse me? Does your church support a mother wishing death on her own child? We support family healing, he said, his smile faltering slightly but the smugness remaining. We believe in tough love. Okay, I said. Good to know. I tapped the screen. I found the file. voicemail_birthday_17.mp3. My thumb hovered over the play button. In that split second, time seemed to slow down. I looked at the receptionist, Sarah, who was holding the phone, ready to call 911. I looked at the client, Ian, who was watching with wide eyes. If I played this, there was no going back. I was nuking the relationship forever. There would be no reconciliation, no Christmas cards, no maybe someday. I would be exposing the darkest, ugliest part of my life to the people who sign my paychecks. Would you have done it, or would you have let them drag you out quietly to save face? Would you have whispered, please leave, and cried in the bathroom later? I looked at my mother one last time. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the crowd, making sure they were watching her performance. She wants an audience? I thought. Fine. Let's give them a show. I turned the volume all the way up. Listen to this, I said. I pressed play. For a split second, there was just the hiss of digital static. Then my mother's voice erupted from the tiny speaker. Because the lobby was all hard surfaces, marble floors, glass walls, high ceilings, the sound didn't just play, it amplified. And it bounced off the security desk and the elevator banks. It filled the air like smoke. It wasn't the voice she was using now, the frantic, concerned mother voice. It was the voice from the other side of the door, the voice of pure, unadulterated hate. I pray God takes you, Marian. The recording was 7 years old, but the venom was fresh. In the lobby, the receptionist covered her mouth with her hand. The security guard stopped moving. I would rather have a dead daughter than a lesbian daughter. My mother froze. Her hand, which had been reaching for me again, dropped to her side. Her face went slack, the color draining out of it so fast she looked like she might faint. She recognized the moment. She recognized the rain in the background of the audio. "You are a maggot in the eyes of the Lord. Don't come back until you're fixed. Don't come back until you're dead to that sin." The recording ended with a sharp click. I didn't say anything immediately. I let the silence do the work. This is something I learned in negotiations. He who speaks first loses. I let the words hang there, vibrating in the air between us. Dead daughter. Maggot. The silence in that lobby was heavy. It was physical. It pressed down on everyone. My project managers were staring at my mother with open horror. The client looked like he wanted to vomit. I looked at Pastor John. The smugness was gone, but the family healing smile had vanished. He was looking at my mother like she was radioactive. He was a bigot, sure, but he was a bigot with a brand to protect. Conversion therapy is a hard sell. Wishing death on your child is a PR nightmare. "You said she ran away," he said. His voice was quiet, stunned. He looked at the Bible in his hands like he didn't know why he was holding it. "You told the prayer group she ran away to do drugs. You didn't say—" He trailed off, looking at me, and then back at her. "You didn't say you wished death on her." My mother panicked. The narrative was crumbling. She looked around the room, realizing she had lost the audience. She realized that the people here didn't see a saint. They saw a monster. "She's possessed!" she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. Her voice cracked, desperate and shrill. "That wasn't me! That was the righteous anger of the Lord! I am a good mother. I tried to save her!" She turned to the security guard nearest to her, a large man named David, who I'd chatted with every morning for 3 years. "She's sick! Can't you see she's sick? Grab her! We need to take her!" David didn't move toward me. He moved toward her. He stepped between us, his face like stone. He was no longer the friendly guy who asked about my weekend. He was a wall of muscle enforcing the perimeter. "Ma'am," David said, his voice dropping an octave. "Did you need to step back?" "I have papers!" she shrieked, waving the petition. "I have rights! She is my daughter!" "She is an employee of this company," David said calmly, "and you are creating a disturbance." I finally spoke. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I kept my voice flat, professional, and deadly cold. "I am not your daughter," I said. "I stopped being your daughter the night you threw my laptop in the mud. I am a stranger, and you are trespassing." I turned to Pastor John, where he was already backing away, inching toward the revolving doors. "And you," I said to him, "if you don't want your church named in the harassment suit I am filing tomorrow, I suggest you leave now." He didn't hesitate. He didn't offer a prayer. He didn't try to mediate. He looked at my mother, then at the security guards, and he made a calculation. I can't be associated with this," he muttered. "Sister, you lied to me." "John," my mother gasped, reaching for his sleeve. "John, don't leave me with her. She's the devil." He pulled his arm away from her like she burned him. "I'm leaving," he said, and he walked out. He walked right out the revolving doors and into the gray Seattle afternoon, leaving her standing alone in the center of the lobby. She looked small. Suddenly, without the priest, without the moral high ground, without the illusion of authority, she was just a loud, mean woman in a lobby where she didn't belong. She looked at me. For a second, I saw the old flash of rage, the scary calm from 8 years ago trying to reassemble itself. She straightened her jacket. She tried to summon the dignity of the matriarch. "You think you've won," she hissed, low enough that only I could hear. "But God sees you. You're still filth, Marian. You're still nothing." I looked at her. I looked at her cheap shoes. I looked at her bitter, lined face. I thought about my bank account. I thought about the code I had written that morning. I thought about the life I had built from scraps. "I make more money in a month than you see in a year," I said. It was petty, it was arrogant, and it felt amazing. "I have a home you can't enter. I have a life you can't touch. And after today, if you ever come within 500 feet of me again, I will have you arrested." I nodded to David. "Please remove her," I said. "Let's go, ma'am," David said, taking her arm. He wasn't gentle. He gripped her firmly, guiding her toward the door. What if she started to scream then? Real, ugly screaming. She screamed Bible verses. She screamed that I was ungrateful. She screamed that I was going to hell. "I raised you. I gave you life. You owe me." I watched her go. I watched as David and the other guard marched her through the glass doors. I watched them stand on the sidewalk, ensuring she didn't come back in. I saw her standing there on the pavement, shouting at the glass, looking like a ghost trapped on the other side of a mirror. The lobby was dead silent again. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a shaking in my hands that I couldn't control. My jaw was locked so tight my teeth hurt. Sarah, the receptionist, came out from behind the desk. She looked at me with wide, watery eyes. "Marian," she whispered. "Oh my God, are you okay?" I took a deep breath. I smoothed my shirt. I looked at the client, who was still staring. "I apologize for the disruption," I said. My voice wavered just a little. "Did we take security very seriously here?" The client blinked. Then slowly he nodded. Yes, of course." "I'm going to take the rest of the day," I said to no one in particular. I turned around and walked back to the elevators. I didn't look back at the street. I didn't look back at my mother. I pressed the button for the 14th floor, but the war wasn't over. The lobby was just the battle, the fallout, the texts, the legal team, the restraining order was about to begin. Because people like my mother don't just go away. They explode. I didn't go back to my desk to code. I went to the bathroom on the 14th floor. I locked the stall door, sat on the closed lid, and shook. It wasn't fear. It was the adrenaline crash. It was the physical recoil of having 8 years of carefully constructed walls breached in under 5 minutes. My hands were trembling so hard I couldn't unlock my phone. My chest felt tight, like I'd just run a marathon in freezing temperatures. And I stayed there for 10 minutes. Then, I washed my face with cold water, reapplied my lipstick, and walked to HR. This is the difference between being a helpless teenager and being a corporate asset. When you are a teenager, the police tell you it's a civil dispute. When you generate millions of dollars in value for a tech giant, the legal department calls it harassment of key personnel. I sat in a glass-walled conference room with the VP of HR and the company's internal counsel, a sharp-eyed woman named Elena. "I'm so sorry, Marian," the VP said. She looked genuinely rattled. "Security has been briefed. She's permanently banned from the premises. Her photo is at the front desk." "I want a restraining order," I said. My voice was steady again. "A permanent one. And I want the company to file it." Elena nodded, tapping a pen against her legal pad. "We can certainly file for a workplace protection order, but for a personal protection order, well, we'll need evidence of a credible threat. Given that she didn't physically harm you today..." "She grabbed me," I said, "and I have the voicemail." I played it for them. Watching corporate lawyers listen to my mother call me a maggot was a surreal experience. Elena didn't gasp like the receptionist. She didn't look horrified like the client. She looked angry. She looked like a shark smelling blood in the water. "She wished death on you," Elena stated, writing something down in aggressive, but sharp strokes. "And she threatened a fraudulent conservatorship in front of witnesses." "Yes." "Okay," Elena said, closing the folder. "We're going to file for an ex parte order immediately. We'll use the voicemail, the lobby footage, and witness statements from security. She won't just be banned from the building, Marian. By tomorrow afternoon, if she steps within 500 feet of you, your car, or your apartment, or she goes to jail." I walked out of that meeting feeling something I hadn't felt in 8 years. Protected. But while the legal machinery was turning, the social machinery was exploding. I got back to my desk and looked at my phone. I had set it face down during the meeting. When I turned it over, the screen was a wall of notifications. 74 new messages. The flying monkeys had arrived. In narcissistic family dynamics, flying monkeys are the enablers, the relatives and church friends the narcissist recruits to harass the victim. My mother had clearly gotten to her phone the second she was on the sidewalk. She had spun a story. She had told them I humiliated her. She had told them I was demon-possessed. She had rallied the troops. I scrolled through the preview screen, watching the messages roll in like a ticker tape of dysfunction. Aunt Carol, how could you do that to your mother? Oh, she drove all the way there to help you. You need to apologize immediately. Cousin Mark, unbelievable. Embarrassing the family like that. You think you're better than us because you have money now? Unknown. Number, probably a church lady. Honor thy father and mother Marian. God is watching. You are breaking her heart. Mom, you think you're so smart. You think you're safe. You're nothing without me. Call me now. Mom, answer me. Mom, I'm going to the hotel. You better be there to apologize. My thumb hovered over the block button. It was tempting. I wanted to erase them. I wanted to hurl the phone into the Puget Sound. But I remembered the protocol. I remembered the folder. Case_file_01. I didn't reply. I didn't engage. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I took screenshots. Every single text, every threat, every guilt trip. Then I did something that felt incredibly powerful. I opened my email app. I started a new thread with Elena, the lawyer. In subject, additional evidence, harassment. Elena, following our meeting, she has begun inciting family members to contact me. Please see attached screenshots of threats and unwanted contact. Please include these in the filing. Click send. I didn't have to fight them. I just had to forward them. By 5 p.m., the atmosphere had shifted. I received a text from an old number I hadn't seen in years, a girl I used to know in youth group, someone who had stayed in the church but kept her distance. Hey, Marian. I don't know if you know this, but Pastor John is doing damage control. He's telling everyone at the church that he had no idea about your mom's extremism. He threw her under the bus to save the ministry. He told the prayer circle tonight that he can't support a woman who wishes death on a child. People are freaking out. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The unexpected consequence of my mother's public performance was that she forced everyone to pick a side. Wherein, when forced to choose between a possessed daughter with a high-powered legal team and a woman who screams about death in a corporate lobby, even the zealots chose self-preservation. The conservatorship bluff had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. By claiming I was mentally ill and needed to be controlled, she had put herself under a microscope, and under that microscope, she was the one who looked unstable. The fallout came in waves over the next 48 hours. First, the restraining order. It was granted the next morning. A process server handed it to her at her hotel. She was legally barred from contacting me. If she sent one more text, she would be arrested. The text stopped instantly. Second, the church gossip. Small towns and insular religious communities run on reputation. My mother's currency was her piety. She was the suffering mother of a prodigal child. But I had played the tape. Pastor John had validated it by fleeing. Now, as she wasn't the suffering mother, she was the woman who got kicked out of a skyscraper by security. She was the woman whose own pastor walked away from her. Third, the isolation. Without the church's backing and without access to me, she had no supply. Narcissists need fuel. I had cut the line. I sat in my apartment that night, looking out at the city lights. My phone was quiet. My email was quiet. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like a fortress. I imagined her in her hotel room, probably crying, probably calling anyone who would listen, trying to spin the web again. But the web was broken. I had receipts. I thought about the 16-year-old girl shivering on the lawn. I thought about how she believed she deserved it. I thought about how she believed she was sin. I looked at the restraining order on my coffee table. It was just a piece of paper, really, but it was also a boundary line drawn in concrete. As some people might say I was too harsh. Some people might say, but she's your mother. She's sick. You should have helped her. But here's the truth. You cannot help someone who thinks your existence is a mistake. You cannot heal a relationship with a person who brings a petition to strip you of your rights. I didn't choose revenge. I chose safety. It just so happens that for a narcissist, losing control feels exactly like revenge. Is there a difference between revenge and justice? Or is revenge just the word people use when a woman finally stops being polite about her abuse? I'd love to hear your take in the comments. And if you think I should have let her explain herself, tell me why. I'm genuinely curious. I went back to work the next day. Most people would have taken the week off. Most people would have needed time to process. But I needed the routine. I needed the logic. I sat down at my desk at 8 a.m. sharp. The view of the Puget Sound was the same. Gray water, were ferries cutting through the mist, mountains in the distance. The coffee from the break room tasted the same. The hum of the server room down the hall was the same steady rhythm I had listened to for years. But something was different. The air around me felt lighter. The constant, low-level background noise of waiting for the other shoe to drop was gone. The shoe had dropped, and I was still standing. I put on my headphones. I opened my code editor, and I looked at the script I had abandoned when Sarah called me to the lobby. Line 42. Error. I fixed it in 10 seconds. Coding is beautiful because it is fair. The computer doesn't care if your mother hates you. It doesn't care if you're gay. It doesn't care if you are homeless. It only cares if your logic is sound. If the syntax is correct, the code runs. If the input is valid, the output is true. For a long time, I thought I was the error in the code of my family. I thought I was the bug that needed to be patched out. But sitting there, watching my script execute perfectly, I realized the truth. I wasn't the bug. I was the feature they couldn't support. My operating system was simply incompatible with their hardware. Later that night, the doubt came. It always does. It's the last gasp of the conditioning. I was sitting on my couch, a glass of wine in my hand, looking at the blocked number on my phone. For a second, just a split second, I felt a pang of guilt. I imagined her in that hotel room, humiliated, alone, probably terrified of the legal papers she had been served. I thought about the mom who used to braid my hair before she found God. I thought, maybe I was too cruel. Maybe I should have just let them take me to lunch and yell at me. Did I really have to destroy her socially? My thumb hovered over the unblock button. Then I closed my eyes and I remembered the rain. When I remembered the specific sound of my laptop cracking on the pavement, I remembered the officer looking at me like I was trash. I remembered the hunger cramps in the shelter that felt like knives. I remembered the voicemail. I would rather have a dead daughter. I put the phone down. I didn't unblock her. I didn't call. I took a sip of wine and let the guilt dissolve into the silence of my apartment. Before, I lived in a house where love was conditional. You dispensed like an allowance only when I performed correctly. Now, I live in a home I paid for, surrounded by friends who know exactly who I am and love me anyway. Before, I was a sinner, a maggot, a problem to be fixed. Now, I am a senior software engineer. I am a taxpayer. I am a survivor. Before, I woke up every morning afraid of the text message that would ruin my day. Now, I wake up to a blank screen and a quiet mind. The restraining order is permanent. The HR investigation is closed. My mother has returned to Texas, leaving behind a shattered reputation and a daughter she can no longer touch. She exists now only as a cautionary tale in my memory, a ghost story I tell to remind myself how strong I am. I learned a hard lesson in that lobby, but it's the most important one I'll ever learn. Blood is not a binding contract. You do not owe your parents your future just because they gave you a past. You do not owe them your dignity, and you certainly do not owe them your life. When if you are the black sheep, the scapegoat, or the sinner in your family, listen to me. You are allowed to save yourself. You're allowed to build a wall. You're allowed to use the evidence you've gathered to protect the peace you've earned. I finished my wine. I walked to my front door and checked the lock. It's a heavy, steel deadbolt. I turned it. Click. It wasn't the sound of being locked out like it was when I was 16. It was the sound of being locked in. Safe, secure, untouchable. I went back to my desk and opened my laptop. I have a new project to start. I am not a sin. I am a success. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over your family, please subscribe. I share stories about boundaries, tech, and survival. And if you're still holding on to a voicemail or a text that proves who they really are, save it. Back up the file. You never know when you'll need to press play.